Just so people know, I don't know if Mike is going to do the intro on this.
I am not.
We are doing Steve Shives, Why YouTube Atheism Needs Feminism.
Perhaps he'll go on to explain why the lactose intolerant should start every morning with a 5-pound stick of his own personal brand of I can't believe it's not spray cheese. Maybe next week he'll tell us why carnivorous bears need bamboo. Okay, bad example.
I personally don't identify as a feminist.
Yes, none of us identify as feminists here. And none of us identify as theists. And that is very much what's important.
But my preliminary answer to that question would be no. Or no, that it doesn't.
Agreed. But I am willing to entertain a disagreement. Look at that, Steve! Did I just blow your pinchy little mind?
So, there you go. But we'll go through it and discuss Shiv's logic.
Shives.
Shives!
Shives.
Shives!
Shives.
Shives!
Shives!
Shives.
Shives!
Shives logic. Yes.
And I don't need to take a devil's advocate position because that, I think, would just hurt. It would be hurty.
No doubt.
And in any case, none of us believe in the devil. Isn't that right, Steve?
Alright, so, let's go. Here we go.
Atheism and feminism are naturally complementary to one another.
Yes, Christianity is naturally complementary to atheism. Islam is naturally complementary to atheism. And feminism is naturally complementary. Because atheism, Steve, is complementary to all theologies. It's not opposed to a belief in the existence of a higher power. It's not a deism, it's a theism. It is opposed to all claims to intervene in the lives of others on superstitious grounds. Superstitious, Steve. The wage gap is superstition. Patriarchy theory is superstition. And cyber violence is nothing but a fucking superstition. Feminism may not be explicitly supernatural, but it is certainly superstitious. Oh, and thanks for showing us, through simple symbolism, how they came up with the name Atheism Plus.
There is no human institution that has done so much in so many cultures across such a long period of time to hold women down as organized religion.
And feminism is no exception.
For most of the history of civilization, the proposition that women ought to be treated equally to men was just as radical as the proposition that gods did not exist.
Yeah, and the notion that men ought to be treated equally to women, that men deserve sympathy and compassion and shelter just as much as women do, is to this very day and age, Steve, a notion roughly as popular as teabagging the corpse of Muhammad's mother.
Before I get too far into this...
You are already too far into this. You are buried under at least 4 layers of monotheism, and the youngest layers are the most radical. You tell a Jew, a Christian, or a Muslim that God does not exist, and most of them, i.e. more than half of them, will say something like, I respectfully disagree, and then still call you an equal. But if you tell a feminist that the patriarchy does not exist, then most of them, i.e. more than half of them, will call you their contemporary version of a heathen, a heretic, an infidel, a kuffar bastard misogynist. And they will abandon all reason for the sake of silencing and ostracizing you, for daring to deny the patriarchy. And from what we can ascertain, it takes about 2,000 years for a religion to reach that safe background level of radiation. I mean, the Jews ran dry roughly around year 0. Funnily enough, the Christians ran out like in the early 20th century. The world wars were basically the supernova of that. And of course, we still have another 600 years of rather headstrong Islamic characters to look forward to. And there are going to be radical feminists for the next 1900 years. And somewhere around the year 3000 is where they really start getting their hands dirty. But this can all be avoided with the cunning use of another age of enlightenment. And it is up to us all to figure out what form that enlightenment will take.
I want to make it clear that I will be using multiple senses of the word atheism throughout this video.
Yes, one that means atheist and one that means theist.
This will be obvious to most of you from the context of what I'm saying, but bitter experience tells me that it will not be so obvious to a few of you.
Steve, leave your bitter experiences out of this. Leave your salty experiences out of this. I don't care what kind of synesthetic jungle of reactionary emotion is going on in there. I'm here to talk about physical evidence and reasoned logic. Okay? The acronym for that is PEARL, because it is richer than your whole tribe.
But the thing is that if you're defining multiple atheisms, how can you argue for each one of them that they need feminism?
No, but it's multiple atheisms in the sense of the motivations. So some of them become atheists because they don't like what religion has to say. Some of them become atheists because they simply don't see the evidence of a god or gods or whatever, right? So that's maybe what he's getting at.
Okay,
I don't know.
let's continue. I'm sure the craziness will begin.
I'm sure.
So before you post an angry comment presuming to inform me that atheism means not believing in gods and that's all it means, let me say that I agree with the first half of that statement, but also remind you that not everyone uses the term to mean that and only that.
Yes, and I think this is why many people who don't believe in any interventionalist theologies will nevertheless claim they're not atheists. It's because of people like you. Because so many people who call themselves atheists are not atheists at all. They're feminists. They believe in a god, they just don't know he's a god. They actually think he's real. He's called patriarchy.
Atheism can also refer to the community of atheists or the body of work produced by that community. It's totally legitimate to notice trends within that community or body of work and to propose that something be done to change those trends that I find troubling.
I sense that we are about to find out why people who disagree with Steve Shives are actually Shives.
Shives!
Is it Shives?
Chives!
Yes, Shives.
Chives! Think of Chives. He's like an onion, but small and pointless.
That are actually not authentic atheists. I sense. You know what? And if I'm wrong, I'll gladly be wrong. But I sense that this is about to happen.
I think he's going to agree that they're atheists, but they're really bad people and they shouldn't be in the community. So they're not that kind of atheist.
Oh yeah, I guess that's why he very carefully defined that people can believe in atheism but not be part of the community of atheists. So he can then set himself up as the person who decides who's part of that community. All right, let's do this thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is.
I'm not proposing that we redefine what atheism means,
Yes, you are.
and I'm not suggesting that people who disagree with me about stuff are not authentic atheists.
Yeshua!
Okay?
Yeshua, Prince Yeshua, son of Yusuf, born of the son of Jesse.
Good.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to turn into another shot to disguise a jump cut. Hey.
What the?
Oh my god! Oh my god! What was that? Hey.
I
Hey.
did. I don't.
I don't.
Whatever it was a little smarmy.
Now apparently we're being picked up in a bar.
It's probably a PUA trick, the hot shoulder. Cry on me, baby. Everyone loves an emotional tampon. Right?
Hey, little lady.
Oh my!
Whose dick do I have to suck to buy you a drink?
I
Okay, it's getting way too hot in here now. Come on, Steve, come get in here and cool everyone down.
As I was saying,
You are abysmal, Steve. That's why we're laughing. So, don't feel bad about being abysmal. It makes people happy.
given the fact that both atheists and advocates for the rights of women have historically been oppressed by organized religion,
Yes. I'm a women's rights advocate. Earlier this year, I actually went to the ends of the earth to advocate for women's rights. And what happened to us could arguably be called oppression by an organized religion. They lied about us, they silenced us, they muscled us out of the building, and they did everything they could to get us arrested. But that's just contemporary oppression. You're talking about historical oppression, which is much worse.
So we have the first assertion that women's rights were oppressed by religion. Let's like that's a really broad assertion. So let's narrow it down to the cultures where atheism sort of springs out of, which would be Western cultures. You realize that insofar as religion had strictures on women's behaviors, it also did on men's.
I agree. You know, whenever atheists bring up that whole line, and I forget what freaking Bible verse.
1 Corinthians 7 verses 4 and 5. This is why I'm not a Christian, because I've actually read the fucking thing. And I'm not a feminist because I've actually spoken to feminists.
They essentially bring up that, you know, married women are told that their bodies no longer belong to them, their bodies belong to their husbands. And they always neglect to mention that pretty much immediately afterwards, men are told the exact same thing. Their bodies no longer belong to them. Their bodies belong to their wives.
We could probably have an argument about which is more oppressive or which is more dismissive of a person's actual needs. I mean, on the one hand, you have the woman submitting to the man, but she's submitting to someone who is in turn submitting to her benefit. And every situation in which he could benefit himself over her is against the will of God. Well...
And throughout all of this, there has been the spectre of a male godhead. A woman who believes in Athena knows she will never be Athena. But a woman who believes in the Virgin Mary worships mortal woman as her goddess. Meanwhile, man knows he will never be Yahweh. The great misdirection of it all is if you have a male god whose only mistress is a mortal woman, it looks superficially as though you're giving mortal men alone the power of the gods. But that's impossible. We're not giving mortal men alone the power of the gods. We're giving mortal men alone the responsibility of the gods, which is as possible as you make it. Yeah, and you might say giving someone the responsibility of the gods is discrimination or something?
And then there's another thing that was sort of pointed out, I think, by Joseph Campbell, is that it's not the people who express the myths of a religion that have the power. It's the myths of the religion. I mean, you're going to go back to Roman times and say the Vestal Virgins made Rome a matriarchy? No, they were part of worshipping a cult of the phallus, the supremacy of masculine energy. I mean, if you look at Christianity, a lot of the emphasis is on female purity separate from men, and this idea that women are a conduit of the divine via Mary, like having given birth to Christ. She had the most intimate relationship with God in the Christian mythos via giving birth to God. Like there was no comparable intimate relationship with men and God mediated through men's bodies. I mean, if you look at the phallus cult of Rome, the relationship between the divine and humanity was mediated through men's bodies. If you look at Christianity, it's mediated through women's bodies, through the natural processes of women's bodies. You cannot divorce that from the discussion of whether or not Christianity is in itself anti-woman.
Well, of course they're going to fit together quite neatly if you ignore all the aspects of feminism that are dogmatic, that are essentially religious, that include magical thinking, that see an omnipresent force being what guides our lives, all of those things. Like, how can you say that, you know, oh yeah, no, I find it, they fit together quite neatly, when you're ignoring so much of it? It's as you're ignoring so much of what's there in feminism that relies on faith, it relies on just listen and believe, it relies on amorphous concepts that can never be falsified, like patriarchy.
You can't question feminism. Fundamentally, you can't question, like the one question, and I repeat this over and over again, but this is the one question you cannot ask feminists. Does feminism truly benefit women? Do feminist beliefs harm women? You can't ask that question, and no feminist so far has ever answered it. Do you ever consider that feminist beliefs could harm women? Do you ever actually do that introspection? And you're presenting this moral truth that we need to benefit women, that other systems have never benefited women as much as feminism, but you never allow the question, does feminism actually benefit women? Have you ever asked, as a feminist, if feminism benefits women or if it hurts women? Because you can't ask these questions, feminism comes across as being incredibly dogmatic. Like, you can't ask that specific question, and yet that is the moral impetus for your authority in feminism, is that feminism supposedly benefits women more than any other system in all of human history. And yet you can't ask that question. That is a religion.
And also given the fact that modern atheism has largely rejected other regressive attitudes traditionally promoted by religious fundamentalism, like hostility to science and modern medicine.
Steve, picture the Venn diagram. You have a set of New Age hippies who think you can cure cancer with echinacea and homeopathic vinegar, and you have a set of feminists. I know what kind of overlap you're seeing, Steve. You're trying not to see it, but it's right there, like a pair of ripe buttocks you can't help squeezing together.
Or overt prejudice against LGBT people.
Okay, all the homosexuals and bisexuals in our audience, give me a hey-oh! There's a lot of people going hey-oh now, Steve. They love us. They fucking love it, especially me. We speak to them, we speak for them, and we speak with them. Hand in hand, arm in arm. We all stand together. Boom, boom. Now, Steve, what is a TERF? Please. And why is there no such thing as a termra? It's because when men argue with transsexuals, they are called transphobic. And when women explicitly ostracize transsexuals, they are simply called another kind of feminist.
You might think that atheism and feminism would be the strongest of allies.
Yeah, if you're a fucking moron, Steve. If you have no idea how anything works and you don't care.
And in the minds of many atheists and many feminists, they are. Thanks to the internet, I have a fairly large circle of friends and acquaintances who, like me, identify as both atheist and feminist, and find that the two fit together quite neatly.
Yeah, Jews for Jesus is a thing. It proves nothing, Steve. Nothing.
My friends and I aren't alone.
No, but you are very lonely.
Voices supportive of feminism are everywhere in the atheist community. Unfortunately, there is also a faction within atheism that is aggressively hostile toward women in general.
Whoa.
And outspoken feminists in particular.
Okay, that's another feminist fucking wormhole. Suddenly we go from being critical of feminists to being critical of women. And again, I will bring you this back to the question that feminists refuse to ask of themselves, of their own beliefs. Does feminism hurt women? You won't even ask that. If you won't ask that of yourselves and have a good hard fucking look at your own attitudes and how they affect women, how can you then turn around and say that we advocate for women? Like, how can you turn around and say that we are synonymous with advocating for women when you won't even ask? You won't even ask the question. Do my beliefs hurt women? Do my beliefs as a feminist hurt women? You won't even ask that question. No, you don't get to say, oh yeah, we're synonymous with women's benefit, and then take on all of the social and evolutionary qualities that give you authority because people recognize you as benefiting women. You don't get to take that on if you don't fucking ask a most basic question about whether or not your beliefs hurt women.
In case anyone's wondering, Alison spent the best part of a decade asking people if they realise how much their beliefs hurt men. I've also attempted that endeavour quite a lot, and the answers people give you generally range from yes, but it doesn't matter, to no, and it doesn't matter. It almost always results in a fruitless grind that leaves you rather drained. So now we're asking if you realize you're hurting women too, in the lunging hope that some kind of penny will drop from this machine. It seems like we're making the same mistake as everyone else by focusing it all on the women, but believe me, this is the only way into the fortress. It's the only moral language everyone speaks. We've learned the moral language of compassion for men. It's a very dead language, but we're trying to teach it to the people who only speak the moral language of compassion for women. And it's going to take a while to hash this out, so, we're not betraying you by speaking their language. We're trying to establish diplomacy here.
Okay, I want to add something too. I want to add that it's just a very, 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 just a little thing. It's not too important, but do we define justice as whatever benefits women? Do we really do that? Do we really define justice as whatever's good for women? Is that how we're defining it these days? Because that seems like brand new. Like we've never, ever, ever defined anything like justice as, what helps and protects and supports and provides for women. Never, just like chivalry is that brand new concept that we've never tried it before.
Crazy talk, I tell you.
We should give it a go. Give it a go, see if it works.
Let's try that whole men saving women and men trying to protect women and provide for women thing. This has never been tried before. Never.
It's revolutionary.
I think I did it in the 80s once.
Yeah, fuck no. It's like, oh my god, this is just completely radical. Women as damsels being saved by men. Radical thought.
That's awesome.
It's out there to the max.
It's so more radical than the idea that maybe justice should apply equally to men and women, and maybe women need to experience the consequences of their actions in order to develop personhood just like men do. And also
Go bless you.
maybe women should be held to the same moral standards as men. So justice needs to apply to women because that means that we are actually helping men when they're vulnerable. To women. And not just that, but women can actually step in and say, hey, that's not right. That we should really take care of men when they're vulnerable. We should actually do something to protect them and provide for them when they're vulnerable. Hey, maybe even if you want to just look at it in terms of benefit to women, maybe that would result in a healthier society in which women don't have to deal with the damaged product of a society that just throws men away when they're not useful, or just refuses to recognize when men have been hurt and actually go out of its way to help them when they've been hurt. You treat men as expendable. You treat justice as something that only applies to women, and then you wonder why certain men just blow up. Well, you give someone nothing to lose. Don't be surprised when they act like it.
Yeah, or if you insist on being surprised, at the very least, please don't blame it all on the apparent toxicity of the Y chromosome. Or is it the toxicity of male-presenting bodies? I can never keep up with this shit.
This faction is most active here on YouTube. Within it are several of the most subscribed to atheist channels. These regularly feature videos attacking feminists, spreading misinformation.
What misinformation?
About feminism.
What misinformation?
Look at he has.
What misinformation?
Look, he has a video of Big Red.
I know.
This is somebody who was like, okay, she has a right to be as bombastic as she wants, but she's like sitting there being an overbearing, like, person doesn't want to even engage in dialogue. Yes, that's going to be criticized.
She's singing Cry Me a River when someone brings up male suicide rates.
Someone who actually experienced a friend of his being experienced him going through suicide, someone who's been personally affected by suicide, and she's singing Cry Me a River when it's brought up as a topic that should be recognized and dealt with for men. And it's like, yeah, if you're going to act like that, you're going to act with such callous, thuggish disregard for a group of people, you're probably going to get called out, and justifiably. If you're going to say that calling out Big Red's callous dismissal, and Big Red refers to her personality and her red hair, nothing else. If you're gonna, and it also protects her because we're not doxing her. We're using a pseudonym based on her behavior. If you're gonna call out criticism of Big Red as illegitimate, no, you don't. Becoming a feminist doesn't give you the right to turn into a horrific, cruel bully.
Look, I know Big Red was like 2 years ago now, but the only reason she's still famous is because she's iconically obnoxious. Right? But this happens at every feminist protest. We don't seek them out to make examples of them. We just set up shop at an event and we record our own interactions with each other. And it's not long before a feminist comes along who's just as obnoxious as Big Red, but with a less photogenic colour scheme. You can say not all feminists are like that, but the ones who form protests against human rights talks are like that, and you can find them in every university. Not all feminists are like that, but millions of them are. The sky isn't always blue, but if I take a picture of the sky, there is a good chance it will be blue. Not all feminists are like that, but if I take footage of a feminist, there is a good chance they will be like that. And the reason you never show any footage of an MRA being like that is because you can't find any.
And attempting to undermine efforts to address problems of importance to feminists, such as sexual assault or the wage gap.
Wait, you don't think that the sexual assault is also important to people who are not feminists? If it's even just setting aside my role as an advocate for male rape victims, the best way to reduce the number of female victims of rape would be, because the majority of them will be preyed upon by men, because it's usually heterosexual when you're dealing with rape, is to actually focus on those men and boys who have been abused and give them the therapy they need. And again, it's just going to be a minority of them who go on to abuse, but give them the therapy they need to resolve the anger and aggression issues that abuse gives them. And again, the majority of men who go on to abuse, boys who go on to abuse as men, and become predators as men, were preyed on by women. Where do you think the anger comes from? Let's deal with that. And that would reduce the number of female victims. So even if you just care about female victims, looking at male victims would benefit women overall more than ignoring them. And feminists don't want to do that.
What I have a problem with is this. Okay, I'm gonna go Godwin.
Fuck Godwin. I'm serious. Godwin is there to prevent inappropriate hyperbole, and sometimes the hyperbole is appropriate. Imagine how Nazi Germany would have worked if half the population was Jewish. They wouldn't be round up and gassed. They would be put to work.
And I'm going to say, see, the problem is the Allies are trying to undermine the attempts of Nazis, of National Socialists, to address issues that are really important to them. Like, the economy and that treaty, and also, all of this Jewish scum everywhere, right? And so really I think that's a horrible thing that these allies are trying to undermine our attempts to deal with the things that are important to us as National Socialists. You actually have to demonstrate that the way you're approaching a problem like the economy, right, in the case of National Socialism, or sexual assault in the case of feminists, is, that you have to demonstrate that you're doing this in a just and compassionate way. not in a way that scapegoats people or scapegoats groups of people and creates more hostilities and more divisions in society.
Duh.
Duh.
Huh?
Okay, but again, we encounter the feminism is beyond criticism. It's above criticism. They just hover above us and proclaim, oh yes, we benefit women. We never ask ourselves if we benefit women or if feminist theory is actually beneficial to women, but you have to just believe it. And this is the authority, this is the platform we use to proclaim over everyone. To hover above everyone and proclaim upon them morally. All right, let's.
And if you don't like it, we'll scream at you.
Oh well, we'll do worse.
We'll lay eggs in you and call it art.
Beyond that, their supporters eagerly join the effort, inundating comment sections with insults, pedantic demands for evidence.
What? Pedantic demands for evidence?
Isn't this the atheist skeptic community? Like, aren't they supposed to prove their claims? I mean, like, isn't that what the creationists would say? You know, all of your demands for evidence are pedantic, you know, just have faith.
Jesus Christ. If you're going to assert something without anybody demanding proof of it, you're not a social science, you're not a science. And if you're not a science, feminism isn't a science, no one has to fucking believe it. And certainly atheists don't have to believe it, considering that's sort of the point.
Of even mundane and uncontroversial claims.
Controversial fucking
Uncontroversial claims.
Who decided that?
Can't even fucking desk properly. Look at me, Shives. Look at what you done. Uncontroversial claims.
Who decided that?
Well, Goebbels.
Goebbels.
Goebbels decided that.
It's Goebbels. There's no R in Goebbels, like in gerbils. Imagine you're saying gerbils in an English accent. Goebbels. It's the only way to do it, I'm afraid. All right, Godwin averted. Hang on, if I'm against Godwin, doesn't that make me the devil's advocate? Because that would be a God lose. You love it when a plan comes together.
Goebbels decided that if you repeat a lie often enough, people will think it's true. Everyone will believe it. And so, especially if it's a big lie, right? So essentially, these claims became uncontroversial because they were repeated over and over and over again. And now everybody just assumes that they're true. And, because, hey, they heard Obama saying it. And, hey, they heard Eric Holder saying it. And, hey, they heard all these people saying it, And so, what was the one? The leading cause of death for African-American women between 15 and 40 or 45 was intimate partner violence. Wasn't that the uncontroversial claim he made that stayed up on the White House's website for years before they finally amended it? And they didn't even amend it. They didn't even say, we were wrong. This has never been true. Because it isn't, and it never has been. But they went and they posted some little addendum at the bottom in the footnotes saying, oh, the information we used to make that claim was out of date. As in, it was true at one time that the leading cause of death for black women was black men's barbarism, right? Black men's propensity for violence, and black men's absolute contempt for women, right? Oh, but that's, that was back then, and it's different now, and we'll just put this little footnote here, to correct that, even though it's never been fucking true. Fuck.
And, okay, so, Jesus, I just forgot what the hell he said.
He said uncontroversial claims. He said these are, they're demanding evidence for uncontroversial claims. Yeah, well, you know what?
They are actually controversial. Who gets to decide they're uncontroversial? And furthermore, why is it that this is all wrapped up here? Because when you advance this kind of female victimhood, when you advance it, you're actually putting women in a particular social role that they've occupied for a very long time, incidentally. So you're saying that these are uncontroversial claims that we cannot actually look at, that justify putting women in the social role of victim, justify that, we can't look at this starting to sound once again like, oh, we can't actually question if feminism benefits women or if feminism actually hurts women.
Steve, even scientific claims are not uncontroversial. Scientists are always arguing about things, as well they should. And even if scientists are unanimous on something, there will always be religious people who disagree with them, for whatever reason. That makes them controversial claims. Even if it's toothless, uneducated hillbillies doing the disagreeing, that disagreement still makes the claim controversial by definition. Because controversial means people disagree with each other about it. See, you're just stating, you're just asserting that nobody disagrees with you about how perfect feminism is. There is just about nothing in this universe that can be called uncontroversial, Steve, except for the thing you call God. Now, listen carefully to me, Steve. The thing you call God is feminism. The thing you call Jesus is women. Now, Steve, did God benefit Jesus?
Yeah, are you really benefiting women? And you can't ask that of feminists. And feminists don't ask that of themselves.
You sure you're all right out there, Jesus? Yeah? You good? Yeah, oh, yeah, he's fine. Yeah, Yeah. This was the right thing to do. There's no way in heaven or earth that this was the wrong thing to do.
So maybe the answer is no. Feminism isn't benefiting women, it benefits feminism.
It benefits the status quo.
Whatever you want.
I plan to ask that question, Shives. I plan to ask the question, does feminism benefit women? I plan to ask it. In fact, I've answered it, but you don't care about the answer, so because you don't care about the evidence, because you've decided it's non-controversial. Well, continue to hurt women, Shives. Continue to punch them in the face, metaphorically. And justify it by saying, well, if I don't punch women in the face, if I don't, then they'll be victimized worse.
And childish declarations that they have been pwned or wrecked. Commenters of this sort also like to...
Oh, he really likes that pose.
Yeah, you're really helping the argument that whatever you're advancing is to women's benefits with such a smarmy, pickup artist pose. Look at me, little ladies. You can trust me. You can trust these eyes.
I have to wonder, because I've never seen him without a hat, right? And I have to wonder what's under there. What's he hiding under there? Is it just like a little bit of male pattern baldness? Or is it like a glass dome with like
Hamsters?
green brains in it?
Like hamster wheel, right?
Yeah, something, I don't know, but he's like, never trust a man who wears a hat all the time.
We'll just leave that one hanging.
She's right, you should never trust me. I'm not bald, but you should never trust me anyway. Not even when I tell you not to trust me. Is it kicking in yet?
All right, let's
challenge feminists to debates on behalf of their favorite anti-feminists.
Oh, I know! Inviting them to debate, challenging them to debate is like the worst fucking thing ever. Oh my god, those poor feminists.
Look, if he's talking about manhood academy, he's got a good point. But he's not. He's talking about someone's favorite anti-feminist.
Why can't we just fucking believe Steve Shives and just fucking get on with it? God damn it, people.
I will say this for the religious people who do engage in debate with atheists. You're doing it better than the feminists. Because apparently asking for a debate, to feminists to debate, is some sort of violence against women. I think they would go that far. That asking for feminists, let's debate these issues. Let's even debate whether or not feminism actually helps women or is hurtful to women. Let's debate that. No, because any kind of debate is harming women. Even I bet even debating if feminism itself harms women, would just having that debate, proposing that debate, saying that feminism can be debatable, is harming women. Jesus Christ, I was so fucking convenient. It's like, wow.
This is the atheist skeptic community. This is the atheist skeptic community. And Steve Shives is saying, this is a resolution that I have passed without need for debate.
Occasionally, especially if the target is a woman, they'll even resort to doxing or threats of physical violence.
Just like feminists will resort to doxing and threats of physical violence against me for what I have to say, and pretty much it all just boils down to you guys, doesn't it? It all boils down to this. There are no bad tactics. There are only bad targets.
The problem here is that a lot of people respond to reason. And when feminists refuse to actually engage with people, debate, when you actually are saying here that asking feminists to debate is some sort of wrong done to feminism or women or whatever you're saying here.
Yeah, it's not women, it's the name of women. Nothing is done by God, but a great deal of shit is done in the name of God. A quite out-freaking amount of shit has been done in the name of women.
Nothing is done in my name. Except if it's done by me, or at my behest.
That creates a lot of resentment because you are basically hovering above people, proclaiming your morality as superior, and you will not even engage in the discussion with them. That pisses people off.
It does. Well, no, I mean, look at it this way, okay? When Anita Sarkeesian closes off the comments on every single video she puts up, and this is not just on her own feminist frequency channel, this is, and it has to be something in her contract. It has to be something in her contract because, you know, when she's speaking at the Sydney Opera House, when she's speaking on, you know, at XOXO Change, when she's speaking anywhere, the video upload of that, the comments are going to be disabled. No comments allowed, right? So people go there and they want to argue. They want to engage in a dialogue. They want to engage in a discussion. And even people like me, right? I've taken to not even reading newspapers if they don't have a comment section. I don't want to read a newspaper article if I can't go in and look at the comments and see what people are saying and maybe say something myself, right? People want to engage in discussion, right? And it's not always pretty, but they want that. And that's a natural human impulse, right? Particularly if you disagree with somebody. And so she's cut off all avenues of being able to get to her, right? To get to her and say underneath where she's making these claims, right? So she's making these broad claims about men, women, and society. And then there's no space underneath for people to disagree so that someone else stumbling on that video can't go and look and see if other people disagree. And maybe they have good arguments and maybe they have lots of evidence for why they disagree, right? No, she's proclaiming. This is a pulpit for her, right? It's not the town square. It's a pulpit for her. And she will not speak other than at a pulpit. And so you go and you see that. And what choice do you have other than to create some random egg account on Twitter and tweet something nasty at her? You had to go out of your way just to even engage in her arguments, engage her in debate and dialogue. You had to go through like this multi-layered freaking onion, this maze, this labyrinth, to even get to a point where you can actually have your say directly. Like, what do you think people are gonna be angry?
Yeah, what makes them angry is the fact that she's anointed herself to be the moral judge over, and all feminists do this. You anoint yourselves the moral judge over us, You anoint yourselves the moral judge over us, and then you marginalize and stigmatize any input that we have into what that moral landscape is supposed to look like. You don't let us have input. You just say, no, you have to submit to our authority. You have to submit to our moral authority. And you don't allow us any input into it? Of course people are going to rebel against that. Because that is actually a form of violence. It's called tyranny. You don't get to govern without the consent of the governed.
The high-profile anti-feminist YouTubers don't directly instigate these actions of their followers, but they don't seem all that concerned with them either, despite these sorts of things being done in their names by self-professed fans of theirs all the time.
Yeah, honestly, I make good arguments, and then my self-professed fans go and they argue elsewhere, or they make their own videos, or whatever, right? That's how debate happens. That's how dialogue happens. That's how a cultural discourse happens, right? You seem to be under the impression, right, that cultural discourse is someone preaching from on high from a video platform where all comments are disabled and ratings are disabled, right? And nobody else gets to have a say. That's discourse to you.
Discourse.
Fuck.
Yeah, no, it's the opposite of discourse. It's fucking... It's tyranny, Steve.
Like I said, it's questions are a mark of a closed mind in feminism's case.
Yeah, it's called faith. And it's even more infinite than human stupidity.
There are two major results of this. First, feminists, especially women, either stop participating.
Fuck me.
Okay, alright, stop.
Okay.
Especially women.
Yeah, I'm safe. There's no chance of me running scared. I'm way down with my man eggs. But we don't want to lose any feminists.
I'm shattered by that. I'm shattered by the idea
That someone could disagree.
that feminists might voluntarily stop participating in a community where they're not welcome, where their dogma is not welcome, where their worldview is not welcome, where their faith is not welcome. I'm shocked, I'm horrified, I'm appalled that there are some feminists who voluntarily cease to participate. But you know what? That's their choice, right? That's their choice to not do that. With someone who wants to participate and they're shut out, that's not their choice, is it?
Well, that's the thing. They want to shut us out from the dialogue because they can't handle the dialogue.
But then they want to call it, inclusiveness, right? They want to shut us out of the dialogue and then call the dialogue inclusive. Fuck me.
That's essentially what they want to do.
They want to fuck you. It's just not in the biblical sense.
They don't want a dialogue. They just want a monologue, us to them. And the other thing is that I love how he's speaking for women here. Does feminism allow you to speak for women, Shives? Does feminism, because that's really convenient.
Yeah, no, we should call this Steve Shives Mansplains. Fuck. Okay.
In the YouTube atheist community, or decide not to start. And second, the atheist community as a whole is perceived by those outside of it as being a place where sexism and misogyny are not merely tolerated, but rewarded.
Except I haven't seen any misogyny from the atheist movement. All I've seen is anti-feminism, and they're not the same thing. And this whole thing, and people from outside get the impression that it's, rampant misogyny everywhere, just misogyny all over the place. Where are they getting that impression from? Because there's plenty of women who still participate in the atheist community, in the atheist movement, among atheists on YouTube, who are not feminists, and they just don't feel like they're hated. So, who's telling the mainstream that atheism is, is just rife with misogyny, right? Is it atheists who oppose feminism, or is it, I don't know, feminists who can't convince the atheists and the skeptics in the community to swallow their bullshit without even looking at what they're swallowing.
Okay, all right. Well, the other thing is that who gets to define misogyny here, Shives?
Shives!
Because I'd like to define it as focusing on a woman's being a victim over actually focusing on her as a person and making personal choices. Because you're taking away a lot of personal choices here for women. Women can't personally choose how they want to engage with the atheist community. You decide that for them as a feminist. You get to decide that. You get to decide that women are victims of the atheist community because feminism has anointed you the bearer of knowledge of how women are hurt. Well, maybe I think promoting women as victims is misogyny because it promotes, instead of seeing women in terms of their personal actions, you're promoting seeing women in terms of how they're acted upon. You are removing an aspect of women's personhood when you do that, Shives, and your obnoxious smile does not help that interpretation.
You see, men and women are different in biological essence. If toxic masculinity and toxic femininity both exist, then they are essentially different too. And if they do exist, then in my experience, toxic masculinity usually takes the form of I did everything, even when they did nothing good. And toxic femininity takes the form of what? I didn't do anything, even when they did something bad. And as such, what you might call misandry and misogyny are also different in essence. They are the mishandling of the roles nature has given to men and women. Nature made women the vessels of new life and men the vessels of provision. As such, misandry is when you treat men like disposable tools, and misogyny is when you treat women like helpless victims. And they could just as easily be called hyperogeny and hyperandry. And the irony is, to restore balance, we must oppose our own nature. Treating men like victims and women like tools isn't right either, unless, of course, a man legitimately wants his victimhood acknowledged, and a woman legitimately wants her utility appreciated. And right now, it looks to me like those are the things feminists are most definitely not doing, either properly or whatsoever, sometimes.
Agreed. And honestly, I find it very ironic that in the earlier thing where he was searching all these misogynistic atheist videos, right? One of the thumbnails was a picture of a woman wearing a shirt saying, I feel safe and welcome at TAM.
Yeah, feminists get triggered when women feel safe. Yeah, it seems to me like a system that might just get itself a wee bit knotted from time to time.
It seems to me that both of these results are undesirable. One of the most damaging effects wrought on society by religion has been the subjugation of women.
All right, stop. Shives, you just said the same fucking thing. Look at that. You had a thumbnail of a woman who said, I feel safe in I feel safe in the atheism community. I feel safe. And you are seeking to speak for them, for women, to decide where they feel safe, where they can feel safe. You are speaking for women. This is the same dynamic that throughout history, men have had to step and say, we are responsible for women's safety. We are responsible for women. These are the laws that men had to abide by in order to take responsibility for women's safety. This is like feminism of 2000 years ago.
It's the same religion as 2,000 years ago. They started calling it Christianity 2,000 years ago. They started calling it Islam 1,400 years ago. They started calling it feminism like 100 years ago. Different they, same it.
And you're saying that in being pushed forward and given charge of women's safety, this was oppression of women. Well, you're doing the same damn thing. You're making your decisions about how women should approach a space, and if a woman isn't afraid of a space, doesn't need your fucking protection, she's somehow problematic, or she ceases to be a woman. Well, there's no difference here.
For centuries, we've been told that Women are unfit for leadership, ought to be kept in narrow gender roles as wives and mothers, and are undeserving of autonomy and generally less worthy than men.
Fuck's sake, Shives. Okay, there it is. I've got my mojo back.
If you are going to set up men as the protectors of women, then women cannot have autonomy.
It's like, yeah, it's Shives, you are taking away women's personhood here. You're doing the same damn thing that these men are doing. You're saying you're classifying women in a vulnerable position that requires your protection. And that's this.
Many atheists are quick to speak out against the religious oppression of women today, whether it's found here in the West.
The only thing widespread in the West that can conceivably be called oppression of women is feminism. If oppression is an appropriate word to use for anything, then it is all feminism has ever done. It oppresses women, it oppresses men, it even oppresses children. Because it takes autonomy away from all three of these groups. Especially women, Steve.
The reason how you're taking away women's autonomy, Shives, is that you are saying the only response to the atheist community is to believe that women need feminists, and specifically feminist men like you, to protect them from it. So the only response, the only acceptable response to women to the atheist community is fear without feminism. Like, you need feminism to engage in the community without fear. And you need feminist men to protect you from non-feminist men in the community, which shouldn't exist at all. That's how you're taking away women's autonomy, by saying that we need you. I don't need you. Sorry, Shives.
And I don't mean to get shallow or anything, but that's really hot. And you may have noticed it's also really hot when men are open and honest about their vulnerabilities. Hot to the women I just defined as hot anyway. You see, Steve, the opposite of hyperogeny and the opposite of hyperandry are both called hot. So it stands to reason, Steve. The least hot humans in the world are enormous rich women who think they're victims, and nasty smug little men who think they're all powerful.
Or in other parts of the world. But if we're going to cite the mistreatment of women as a point against religion...
Here's a question, Shives. Do you think it's acceptable for a woman to believe that the atheist community is perfectly safe without being escorted by feminists or feminist men? If you don't, you're removing women's autonomy, their ability to make an autonomous choice about this community.
Here's another question. Since we're talking about multiple senses of the word atheism, do you consider feminism to be a kind of atheism? Because in the face of your comments, Steve, I'm trying really hard not to conclude that men's rights advocacy is a kind of atheism. Yeah, I was thinking of just sort of running through it as though we didn't take a break. The cat's gone and the lighting's different, so there's no way around it. We take breaks, folks. This is fucking exhausting. But we do it to ourselves and we know it. Alright. Act 2. Commence.
Shouldn't we be vigilant about identifying and confronting the mistreatment of women in our own communities?
Isn't that alleged?
Listen and believe, Alison. Like a good little skeptic.
I mean, is there any indication that there's a greater degree of mistreatment of women relative to men or any other community in the atheist community?
No.
Like,
At least I see no evidence of it.
are you just creating a problem so that you can swoop in on your white horse and save the women folks?
You know, honestly, I think that probably the atheist community and the skeptical community would be much more, much less oppressive of women. It would be one of the places where women would find themselves the most free to express themselves and stuff like that, right? It just seems that because it's a predominantly male community, at least the community itself is predominantly male, because the people who care about atheism and those kinds of things enough to actually participate in a community, they are more likely to be male than female. Atheists are more likely to be male than female, to begin with.
Which makes no sense at all, according to any of the things Shives is saying.
And then you have people who are ambitious enough to, in their atheism, to participate in the community. They're more likely to be male than female. And so women are going to be outnumbered, but that doesn't mean they're unwelcome. And what seems to be the case is it seems to be another one of these things that because it isn't 50-50 men and women, then there must be some kind of misogyny problem going on there.
Okay, well, to that I would point out that actually religious communities tend to be predominantly female.
Yes. And so there must be some kind of misandry problem. It isn't like, men would rather sleep in on Sundays and then watch, like, football. No, that's not why they're not going to church. It's because the church hates men.
Well, it doesn't hate omnipotent men. It doesn't hate male gods, or female gods, or female humans. But apart from that, we're good.
Or alternatively, that somehow these women who comprise the majority in their religious communities are oppressing themselves.
Yeah, no, they're choosing oppression over liberation by being religious.
Well, yeah, and this is an argument I've actually had in person. Men may get forced by the government to pay for children they didn't decide to have, but what about the women who don't have abortions because of their religious beliefs? Because that's the equivalent. Yes, women choose to have religious beliefs, choose to individually interpret those religious beliefs, choose to waiver the chapters that forbid you having sex before marriage, or indeed sex without the intent of reproduction, but choose not to waiver the chapters about aborting blastocysts or, I guess, whatever, and then choose not to have the child put up for adoption. All of the above completely free of charge, of course. And that poor woman, through no choice of her own, has to raise a child. Paid for by the government or the father, of course. And that is the equivalent of a man being put to work on pain of jail time for 18 years for choosing to have sex, or somehow choosing to be raped, or somehow choosing to be arbitrarily named as the father without his knowledge. If your detractor makes this argument, try explaining that these are not equivalent things. And see if you can get a response other than your mother fucked your head up. Well done if you can.
Religious oppression of women can be easy to spot. Churches have rules banning women from certain roles, imposing rigid standards of dress and conduct, establishing gender-segregated worship services, and so on.
How is gender segregation oppression of women?
Yeah, doesn't that mean men are also segregated? Like, Shives, like, that doesn't even... Alright. So, would having safe spaces be gender oppression of women as well?
I think so.
No, see, when South Africans do it, it's called apartheid. When we do it, it's called... We don't call it racism, so it's not. That's what makes us different from the actual racists. Because actual racists totally think they're being racist. Because they're a bunch of talentless murderers with no sense of humour. Oh, it's not true, actually. I've finally met a nice South African. That's bloody surprising, man. Okay.
Oppression of women in the YouTube atheist community is not nearly so formal.
No, dear. No, sometimes we even pass the duchy on the right-hand side.
Nowhere is it codified that women should not be allowed to speak freely. But the hostility toward feminism, the petulant complaining in response to attempts to address sexism,
the expectation that women fulfill the role of victim, the continual expectation that women fulfill the role of victim so we can be your damsel object, Shaves. Shives, Shives,
Shives!
Shives!
Shives,
Shives, damn it!
Shives, Shives. Don't hurt me.
Did you seriously think this wouldn't get turned into this episode's YouTube poop? Get on with it, engine room! Hive! Hive! Bunny! I hope this does strange things to your ego, Steve. It did strange things to Oliver Cromwell, too.
This is, we can't look at that and say, hey, that is its own form of taking away women's autonomy and expecting them to occupy a much smaller space, even if it's just psychological.
Oh, but you're just being a chill girl, Allison. Don't be a chill girl. Don't you know that's like internalized misogyny, and you're only doing that to get the approval of men and get men to like you. And you know, and you're betraying the sisterhood by being such a chill girl. Like, you know, and you need somebody, you need actually to be taken away and put in a room with your like eyelids propped open, right? And you're strapped to your seat watching all kinds of media on this huge screen in front of you to show you what misogyny actually looks like, because obviously you can't recognize it. You're too dumb. You need to be educated. God damn it, Allison. I thought better of you.
I don't want to be your fucking damsel, Shives. I'm not interested. I don't want to be your damsel. Fuck off.
And die. Well, eventually. It would really suck if you lived forever, is what I'm saying. Try and die in the next 100 years or so, if you can. Because it would even suck if you lived to be over 100, Steve. I know it's mean, but it's honest. You will probably live longer than me. Tall alcoholics rarely live very long. And pointless goblins like you frequently live to ripe old ages. So you can give me this little moment of venom, Steve, given that I will probably die long before you. But at least I can live with myself. And I will die with myself. You will die with no one. I'm... yeah.
And the outright withering abuse that greets women in this community.
Withering abuse that greets women in this community. I've never experienced withering abuse when I venture into the atheist community.
Yeah. Well, our experiences are anomalous, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. I guess it's probably because we're not preaching some religion about, like, a huge amorphous patriarchy that tells us all what to do and fills our minds with hatred of women.
Okay. Alright, good.
Incidentally, as a man, I don't experience this withering abuse from atheists, anything like as much as I experience it from Buddhists. White Western Buddhists, obviously. Now, that might just be a correlation, or maybe a cult of superficial compassion is exactly the kind of cloak that a professional victim ideologue would wear. Perhaps Buddhism was the reason Japan joined the Second World War. Maybe Buddhism isn't a fluffy little fawn of a religion. Maybe it's just yet another series of Spanish Inquisitions waiting to happen. Food for thought, eh?
All add up to send an unmistakable message. You and your point of view are not welcome here.
Oh my fucking god! Oh my fucking god! You and your point of view are not welcome here! Projection! If a woman doesn't actually agree with feminism, she's out the fucking door! And don't tell me that not all feminists are like that. Don't tell me that! Because the feminists who have the ability to do this use it! They use it! You're a woman who disagrees with feminism? Out the fucking door! Feminism does not speak for all women. Doesn't speak for me.
Feminism doesn't even speak for 20% of women. Feminism does not even speak for 20% of women.
And that's just in the areas surveyed. I presume Karen's referring to the amount of women who outright say feminism doesn't speak for me, rather than the women who simply don't identify as feminists, which is considerably higher than 20%, I should think. Quite considerably.
Alright, let's keep going.
Many atheists also identify as humanists, or at least share many key humanist values. but it seems to me that no humanist worthy of the label would tolerate women being mistreated in their community.
You know what? You know what? I'm just going to go back to this whole, all of these commenters who watch my videos and watch Thunderfoot's videos, and then they go on and they say stuff in our names. Like, what is this? Is this a battle? Is this a battle to be the one to speak for people? Is this what it is? Because this seems to be what it is. Less than 20% of women are feminists, right? Feminists insist, like, these are people who have appointed themselves to speak for women against the wills of the people they are presumably speaking for, the people they're claiming to speak for. Women are saying, you don't speak for me, right? And we're being told that we're wrong to say that. And then on top of that, any random fucking derfwad who goes off and watches a Thunderfoot video and then says, I hate you, go die in a fire, to some feminist, they're speaking in Thunderfoot's name.
Yeah, a lot of people can't do it even without the dog or the phone. Karen can do this with the dog and the phone going on.
I'm busy, oh my god.
Okay. Let's just continue.
Women being human, last I checked.
Yes, because the women's rights movement is a human rights movement, and the men's rights movement is a hate group. Because men are not humans. They are hate.
Humanism and feminism don't stand in opposition to each other.
Whoa.
And anyone who thinks they do has misunderstood at least one, and probably both, of those things.
Okay, alright. Humanism and feminism is very much standing in opposition of each other. Have you noticed that the feminists at the UN who are advocating getting rid of the common carrier, the laws that protect that actually created the freedom on the internet? You didn't notice that.
No, he didn't notice that. And he didn't notice that every time somebody says, I don't consider myself a feminist, I'm a humanist, or I'm an egalitarian, feminist harpies come like, die, non-feminist!
That sounds exactly like a pterodactyl. Do not ask me how I know exactly what a pterodactyl sounds like. That is for me to know. Means no.
Well, they can't live with us, right? They cannot live with non-feminists. They can't accept that we have a right to exist.
It doesn't matter how nicely you explain, I just think that the name just implies a certain sexism, and I really believe in your core values, but, the name just seems sexist, so I prefer to call myself, even though I completely agree with you, I prefer to call myself an egalitarian. Rah! Kill, die, non-feminist!
I'm feeling triggered. Triggered means turned on, doesn't it?
That's what they get. That's what people get. But they're totally compatible. Totally compatible.
I'm triggered by heterosexual intercourse. Yep, I think I just figured out how our species is gonna die.
What about the role YouTube atheism's pronounced streak of misogyny plays in how atheism is perceived by non-atheists? Though the anti-feminist YouTubers aren't representative of the broader community, theirs are often among the first voices encountered by people who are curious about atheism.
Yes, because they have huge amounts of support, because they are the voices that represent the broader community.
Just like the broader community of Tumblr is represented by feminists, the broader community of YouTube is represented by not feminists and atheists, people who don't believe in any theologies or in feminism. There's one more step in balancing that equation. What do we end up with, Steve? Feminism equals theology. As far as the YouTube community is concerned, feminism is a theology. As far as the Tumblr community is concerned, non-feminism is a theology. I can't yet explain this, Steve, but for some reason, the medium of single-frame art is susceptible to feminism in the way the medium of motion picture is not. For some reason, 24 frames a second works in men's favour, and 1 frame for all infinity works in women's. Sometimes the cause is biological and sometimes it's social, but on this occasion, I'm going with social. This is very probably skewed too far, right?
And then when, these people stumble into what you think is the broader community, they stumble upon Richard Carrier saying, "It's us or them. You're either with us or you're against us. You're either 100% online with Atheism Plus or you're my enemy." I am the Pope of Atheism.
Yeah. And every time a new feminist atheist pope comes along, all of Tumblr goes, "Yay!" And all of YouTube goes, "What the hemorrhaging fuck are you talking about, dickhead?"
God damn it. Like, what universe is this guy living in?
Okay, alright.
Like most minority groups, atheists are often misrepresented. We need to make sure that the stereotype of an atheist as an angry, condescending male chauvinist is just that, a straw man that doesn't represent the general character of our community.
Okay, but who's promoting? Who's promoting that view of atheists? Who's saying that atheists are typically, condescending, combative male chauvinists?
Could it be the same people saying MRAs are typically condescending, combative male chauvinists?
By submitting to the group of people that's strawmanning atheism, atheism will no longer be strawmanned.
Gonna get your head this time, Steve.
And we don't do that by rounding up the anti-feminists and running them out of town on a rail, as I have occasionally been accused of advocating.
Yeah, I mean, at a series of points, he eventually said men who complain about selective service just want to rape and beat women. he's a character, is our Steve.
Aw, Steve, you care.
No, oh, well, I wonder what they do. Burn us at the stake?
Oh, well, then I wouldn't have to cook dinner, would I?
You'd be dinner.
We do that by speaking up for ourselves, by making our voices
more logical and ethically defensible than theirs?
louder and more numerous than theirs.
Gotcha.
We need to make it clear to them, to ourselves, and to those outside of our community with whom we hope to coexist in freedom and peace and equality, that the anti-feminists, the sexists, the misogynists do not speak for us.
Okay, so essentially, this is a really privileged position he's put himself in, because he's essentially said that anybody who opposes feminism hates women. Okay. Here, Shives. Again, I ask you, do you ever question if your feminist beliefs hurt women? Do you ever question that? And I would love for you to do a video explaining, if the answer is yes, explaining what those specific beliefs that you believe, that you have found that are problematic, specific beliefs in the feminist lexicon that you found are problematic towards women. And if you say no, I would like you to explain to me why I should trust you as an authority on what women's benefit is if you are not willing to ask yourself the question, do my feminist beliefs hurt women? If you want everyone else to ask that question about their beliefs, you're not willing to ask it about yours. So who appointed you? Arbiter, judge and jury over what benefits women.
He appointed himself, okay? And here's how it works, okay? You find a group of disenfranchised people. Either they are disenfranchised or they have been convinced that they are, right? Or they want to believe that they are. And then you say, oh, you're a bunch of disenfranchised women. Oh, allow me to help you. I can be your leader. I can speak on your behalf. Now look how important I am. Oh my goodness, am I the big man now?
I tried so hard to think of something to say here, but
And that's the thing. It's like you get to stand in judgment. You get to decide which women, which femininity. You know, if a woman does female wrong, you get to stigmatize her and say she's doing it internalized misogyny wrong. She don't play my damsel. She's got the internalized misogynies, and she's doing femininity wrong. You've appointed yourself there. You get to decide. Well, screw you.
Agreed. Screw you, Steve Shives.
To some of you,
Actually, no, don't.
this may sound like I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. Women aren't being forced to undergo genital mutilation or marry into indentured servitude on YouTube.
Those are things that happen to... What are you doing, Steve?
Yeah, the YouTube atheist community isn't like holding women down and cutting their genitals or like forcing them to marry and then like putting them in burqas. Oh my goodness, they're not doing that. And so yeah, no, they're not all bad. They're not all bad. They just need more re-education.
Well, why wouldn't you want to focus on those communities that are doing that? Why are you here lecturing atheists? And furthermore, strapping children down and cutting into their genitals, we could that happens to more men than women. It happens to more boys than girls.
And when it happens to girls, it's perpetuated predominantly by women.
And seriously, Steve, I do wish you the best of luck in the event of your divorce, because as you'll find out, luck is your only option other than indentured servitude.
But if the amount of anti-feminist rhetoric, not to mention the exuberant applause that often greets that rhetoric, is keeping atheist women from having a stronger voice in our community, and it is...
No, it is not. No, it is not. It is keeping feminist women from having a stronger voice in your community, and I applaud that. Oh wait, shit. Jazz hands.
Isn't that a problem?
But women are strong.
And if that rhetoric consists not merely of honest, informed disagreement, but straw manning and demonizing of feminism of the sort that we would never tolerate were it directed at atheism, and it does, shouldn't we be standing against it?
Were it directed at the atheist misogynists, we would never tolerate that if it were directed at all of those misogynistic, woman-hating atheists who, like, just rapity rape all the time. Oh, we would never tolerate them being strawmanned that way. We would never tolerate, you know, all of these men in the atheist community being portrayed as a bunch of rapists and sexual harassers. So we would never tolerate that, would we? Would we, Allison? We would never tolerate that kind of strawmanning. Would we?
No.
When will these people stop talking to me like I'm a fucking animal?
Okay, well, we're not tolerating it now. That you're right, Shives. We're not tolerating now. I'm actually going to specifically call it out as abusive and shitty to do to a group of people, implicate them like this, based on I don't know what, like, because you want to take over the group as Grand Dick Poobah, protector of all the women. All hail Shiv's mighty shaft.
He's a complicated man. Etc.
He wants to succeed Richard Carrier as the new Pope of Atheism, I think.
Well, maybe they'll have the same sort of similar phallic uniform.
Then he'll have all the bitches. All the bitches belong to him.
This isn't the first time I've talked about this. I've spoken out strongly in support of feminism numerous times, and it's always incensed a certain portion of those who watched those videos.
Are you talking about the videos where you talk a shit ton of lies and bullshit about the men's rights movement? Because that's not speaking out strongly in support of feminism. Or is it, Steve? Is your particular brand of feminism definable as the anti-men's rights movement? It looks a lot like that's the case. And that's why people don't like your shit, Steve, because it's basically just religious hatred of men. Some of us are capable of recognizing that the religious hatred of men is a thing.
Some even try to deflect the charge of being anti-feminist by claiming that it's only third-wave feminism that they really have a problem with.
Steve, I want you to listen closely to what you're about to say, because I don't think you know you said it. Even when you were writing it, your brain had gone to the bathroom to flagellate itself. So I'm building it up for you. You, Steve, are about to compare third-wave feminism with the second law of thermodynamics. I mean, comparisons don't have to be equal in weight, but they do both have to be positive integers. Ever since its discovery, it has never been thinkable to even propose a physical theory that strays anywhere beyond the ever-faithful constant of the second law of thermodynamics, Steve. If your theory disobeys it, then your theory is doomed. It's the reason all these fucking machines work, Steve. The closest third-wave feminism will ever get to even being temporarily mentioned in the same sentence as the second law of thermodynamics, Steve, is when the third-wave feminists demand the second law of thermodynamics be unlearned because it's somehow phallocentric.
In my experience, most people who make such comments demonstrate an understanding of third-wave feminism roughly equivalent to the average young Earth creationist's understanding of the second law of thermodynamics.
Most people who make such comments demonstrate a misunderstanding and a misperception of second and first wave feminism. Oh.
It's a revolution with no end, and there's no conception in the feminist lexicon that they might go too far. And they don't measure the side for men. They don't do anything to measure the situation for men. So they don't know how men are actually doing, ever. And if you do, you're a fucking men's rights activist and you're a horrible person. If you just even reference it. So they never measure the situation for men. They just keep piling more and more and more on the female side, never measuring the male side. And they don't think at some point they're going to shoot past equality into supremacy if they don't actually have an exit strategy. If they don't actually have a point where they say, oh yeah, maybe we should look at this other side and see if we've actually achieved equality. They just keep piling it on. No, don't measure that other side. That's misogyny. That's a misogynist. Don't measure the other side. And then it's like, oh, but it's not equal yet. It's not, you've got to pile more on. Well, can't you, how the fuck do you know if it's equal if you don't measure both sides? You just presume.
Exit strategy. Later, we're all good.
Okay, I think I'm done.
I'm done with this too. At least
I don't think it's gonna get, like, the thing is, I get the sense once the stupid rhetorical questions start that I don't think anything more will be added. It'll just be a reiteration of everything else that he said before. So I think this is sufficient.
even if it's not, we can do the other half of it some other time.
Wash your mouth out with soap.
I think I have this much wine. This much.
Karen, I'm disappointed in you.
If Mike sees anything worth answering to in the second half...
What?
No.
Fucking enjoy yourself, Mike.
I don't know, let me see if I can head desk properly. No, that really hurts.
You're not gonna do it?
I don't sense any progress forward after this point.
Yeah, no, it's just probably gonna be more of the same.
Bullshit. Like, more of the same, Shives?
Shives! No, yeah, Shives, yeah, well done.
Shives decides how women are supposed to women. And they're supposed to women themselves right into his damsel harem. And make the decision. I think it's all encapsulated in this one question. Shives, do you think it's acceptable for a woman to think of the atheist community as being perfectly safe without hiding behind your giant phallus?
And I'm seriously losing the light.
The light of the almighty...
You know, do you need to just slap it out there and all the women need to be, the atheist community, Shives, pull out your gigantic weapons and save us! Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's okay for women to just be like, you know what, Shives, I don't need you. I don't need feminism. I'm fine. Thank you.
I don't want to hide behind his phallus.
I don't want either.
I mean, if it would cheer him up a bit, I'd take one for the team.
I don't think that would be a very nice place to be, actually. There's only one view.
Yeah, up.
And it's of his phallus.
Yeah, but also, I mean, this is the metaphorical one too. It's not just his physical one. It's like a metaphorical. His great agency shall protect us, little women's folks. He can determine where it's safe for us to be. That kind of shit.
Yeah, I know, and that's not anywhere. That's not anything like religious oppression.
Okay, I think I'm good.
All right. Okay. Fuck it.
It's just you and me now, Steve. Just you and me and the sheep. You drove the women out of the conversation with your rampant misogyny. That's the only conclusion I can think of.
I've also lost count of how many times I've received indignant comments declaring that though I call myself an atheist, feminism is my true religion.
Oh, you don't say. And what's your defense there?
A religion, as any self-professing atheist worth a damn ought to know, is typically defined as a belief system based on divine revelations and dogmatic principles handed down from unquestionable authorities. Uncontroversial claims, pedantic demands for evidence, pedantic demands for evidence. Feminists are mindless followers of authority. Uncontroversial claims. Needs to take his head out of his ass. Evidence. Such a worldview is only possible if the perception of the person holding it is clouded by ignorance,
petulant complaining,
or warped by unconscious bias.
outright withering abuse.
Two conditions that we who fancy ourselves skeptics strive to correct, do we not?
Pedantic demands for evidence. Pedantic demands for uncontroversial claims.
I've even suggested that the atheist movement would be better off if it adopted an approach more like that of intersectional feminism.
Yes, Steve. The version of feminism where everyone who isn't a straight white cis male gets treated like a child. You're a pip, Steve. You're a fucking pip.
An intersectional atheist would necessarily be someone who wants the movement to be even broader and more inclusive than it already is.
Yeah, by getting rid of all the misogynists. You want to attract women and racial minorities and LGBT people as long as you get to eject the misogynists. And the misogynists are whoever you call misogynists, Steve. Which is everyone in the fucking world. This is how Atheism Plus ended up kicking everyone out of the movement until there was nothing left but moderators moderating moderators. Because you are not compassionate thinkers at all. You are moral bullies. You claim to be about inclusion, but you live to exclude. Skeptics don't like moral bullies. You are even worse than pseudoscientific charlatans. You're not just trying to make a quick buck. You are actually hell-bent on throwing your weight around forever. You're not greedy for money. You're greedy for power. Greedy for the ability to condescend, to belittle, to banish, to bemoan. You're not even driven by self-interest. You just want to watch the world burn.
And as for the women who have fled our community or never came within a mile of it in the first place because of those who spew and praise such rhetoric, well, you know what? To hell with them. I guess they're just not as good at tolerating disagreement as the rest of us are.
Pedantic demands for evidence. Angry, hateful, ignorant, reactionary feminist rhetoric. Uncontroversial claims.
Pronounced streak of misogyny.
Pedantic demands for evidence.
Infusion of misogyny.
Uncontroversial claims.
Doxing or threats of physical violence. Evidence. A place where sexism and misogyny are not merely tolerated, but rewarded.
Uncontroversial claims.
A straw man that doesn't represent the general character of our community. Well, you might not agree with it, but we wouldn't want those who do agree with it to feel unwelcome in our community. Now shut the fuck up, sexist. Shut the fuck up, misogynist. Shut the fuck up, sexist. Shut the fuck up, misogynist.
Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
Demeaned.
Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
Abused.
Shut the fuck up. Sexist. Shut the fuck up. Misogynist.
And browbeaten.
Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
It's embarrassing.
Pedantic demands for evidence.
It's indefensible.
Uncontroversial claims.
It harms us as individuals.
Doxing or threats of physical violence.
And as a community.
Petulant complaining. Outright withering abuse.
And it is long past time that we put a stop to it. Needs to take his head out of his ass, okay?
Honey badger rips the face off the puppet master, chews it out like a honey bastard, spit it out into your curry pasta. The honey badger.
You're quite dedicated. Welcome to the After Credits After Show with Professor Hamstra. If you're interested in seeing more of Mike, please consider viewing The Ragening. If you're interested in hearing more of Karen, please consider The RageZerker. And if you really enjoyed the RageZerker today, please consider becoming a Honey Badger patron so that we can continue to put on more quality content just like this.